typing interpretation, which is great.
Awesome.
Oh, it sounds like we're live. So this is the week 2 of our community or our Cooking Matters at Home class. And we are going to do a cooking demo together. So if you'd like to cook along with us, you definitely can. We'll be making black bean burgers, but you're welcome to make any recipe along with us too. I know some people are watching this live and some are watching probably at a later date when it's recorded. But I just wanted to say hi again. I'm Shayna, and Gina is here as well.
Hello.
And we are going to be making black bean burgers. So in class, we talked about how the protein food group is like a quarter of what my plate is. And sometimes when people think protein, they just think about meat. And meat is a very, very good source of protein, but it's actually really, really good for our health to vary the different types of proteins that we have. Both for our budget, but also for our nutrition, especially to lower the amount of saturated fat. And so we'll have a handout on this as well, but there are 3 types of fats. You're welcome to answer.
能听见，很好，很清楚。
Or you can answer in the YouTube live chat. Does anyone know the 3 types or any of the 3 types?
Okay.
So, what'd you say?
I can answer this.
Yeah, what are they, Gina?
So they are unsaturated fats, saturated fats, and two kinds of names: partially hydrogenated oils or trans fats.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you so much. And so sometimes people will talk about the more healthy fats and the less healthy fats. Fats are just like a really, really crucial part of what we need to function in our bodies, but different types are better for our health and other types are better in moderation. So unsaturated fat are often called the more healthy fats, are the ones that are often found in vegetable oils like olive oil or canola oil or sunflower oil. They're the kind found in avocados, they're in peanut butter, fatty fish, and any nuts and seeds. And most of the fat that we eat is ideally going to be that unsaturated fat. And it really helps a lot of your body, especially your brain. And it also can help lower your LDL cholesterol, which is the cholesterol that's harder for your body to break down, which will help lower your risk of heart disease and stroke. And then the saturated fats are a little bit less healthy for us, but really totally great and healthy in moderation, are usually from animal foods. They're the ones that are solid at room temperature. So butter or lard, cream, a lot of the fats that we find in dairy and in meat. And they're also sometimes in baked goods and fried food and even in coconut oil, like a vegetable fat. And so that one we just want to have in moderation. And then Gina also mentioned the trans fats, which are also called partially hydrogenated oils. And so those are actually ones that are usually made from vegetable sources or plant sources, but actually modified. It's called hydrogenated because they add hydrogen to make it a little bit more shelf stable. But those ones actually both kind of raise our LDL, our bad cholesterol, and lower our good cholesterol. So those can really raise our risk of heart disease and stroke. And so these are the ones that we actually want to avoid. And the most common places we find them are in pastries, pie crust, biscuits, cookies, some types of margarines, and they'll actually be on the label as hydrogenated oils or partially hydrogenated oils. So we just want to check that first. Is there anything else we should add about fats, Gina?
If all this is any kind of level of daunting or confusing, just keep in mind unsaturated is the good oils that we want, and that is liquid at room temperature. I think that is one of the easiest rules of thumb that has always helped me, is that liquid
nice.
oils are the unsaturated. They are the ones that are good for you. And animal fat, anything that's kind of like lard or butter that is hard at room temperature tends to be saturated.
Exactly.
Those rules of thumbs. I just want to keep that in mind. Yeah.
And the way they interact with our health is really about like our cardiovascular health. So with heart disease and stroke and just wanting to keep our cholesterol in like safe and healthy levels. Yeah, we'll be actually, so one of the reasons why we're using beans in our recipe today is that beans are a really good source of protein without having very much saturated fat at all. So we've got some black beans today. I did try this recipe out earlier in the week just to double check it, and I didn't have any black beans, so I used chickpeas or garbanzo beans, and it was actually really great. So that's definitely a substitution you can make. I also didn't have a red onion, so I used the yellow onion. You can kind of, use what you've got. But in the, I would show this to you, but it's kind of a little bit small font. But in terms of fats, there's actually 0 grams of fat total. So there's not any fat, saturated fat, or trans fat. So beans can be a really good option for protein without having a lot of added fats that aren't really as good for us.
I want to add also that referring to our Tuesday lesson, so yeah, there's no fat in the canned beans, but the thing that we always want to look out for in canned beans is sodium. So
Exactly.
keep an eye out for that. What's the sodium in that?
This one has 3.5 servings per container, and it's 20% of our daily value. So it's 450 milligrams. So times 3.5, this is going to be like, what is that? Like 70% of our daily value of salt for the day if we were to eat the whole can. So this recipe does make 6, and it has 2 cans of beans. But it's really just important, yeah, like Gina said, to look at that. And so I'm actually going to rinse the salt off of these when it's time to do that, which won't remove all of it, but we'll get some of that excess salt off. So yeah, and I kind of already mentioned that you can use whatever beans you have, whatever onions you have, whatever herbs and spices you have and you like. Today we'll be using a red onion and some garlic and some parsley and different seasoning. So I'm actually going to I left my onion in the fridge, which is a tip that someone told me in a Cooking Matters class of how to not cry as much. Just didn't want to cry in this demo. But yeah, I'll go grab that.
I think there's a song about crying on your birthday.
Crying on your birthday. Oh yeah, it's my birthday today. So
happy birthday.
Glad to be here. So Gina already kind of explained a little bit about knife safety. If anyone wants to share in the chat or on the YouTube channel comments, like anything that you remember about how to use a knife safely, go for it. I'm going to start, so you can kind of see my cutting board and my knife right here. I'm going to start with the garlic. And so Gina showed us a pretty cool trick where you can put your knife on top and then push your hand into it, which gets the papery part off. I know that whenever I try to do it with my nails, I smell like garlic all day and it kind of hurts my fingernails. And with this garlic, we're actually going to mince it. And so we'll go kind of back and forth over the garlic. Oh, there's some paper in there still.
So Shanna also has that pinch grip going, as you can see. Nice.
And one tip that I think I mentioned in the last cooking demo, the recipe calls for 1 clove of garlic. I might toss another one in because I just am like a pretty large garlic enthusiast, but feel free to use as much or as little as you want. And always be careful when you're kind of pushing things off your knife. All right.
So mince is pretty small, right?
Yeah. So a mince is pretty small. We just want to have it so that like you don't kind of bite into a piece of garlic.
所以你吃得好哎。
But you have like a little, bite-sized pieces.
And then usually you will see dice as the next size up and then chop as the next size up. So chopping is typically a 1/2 inch pieces and dicing is about a 1/4 inch. And mincing is as small as you can get it. So like Shana said, so you don't bite into any big pieces.
You just want to make sure when you scrape things off that you don't use the blade part, because it can dull your knife a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next we're gonna do the onion. I hope that I don't cry with it. If I do, it's okay. I believe that it's going to be 1/4 of the onion. Let me pull up
Mm-hmm.
1/4 of the onion, and what does it want us to do? Finely mince. Oh yeah, so this is something that you can use a food processor for if you have one, or even a blender. But I'm actually just going to chop it up pretty small to show how you do it in case you don't have that. And we'll mash it up all together. So you can kind of see this is a round food, and Gina mentioned last week we want to cut that in half to get a flat edge. Set half of that aside, and then do it again. And what was it? It was a mince, is that right?
This is, well, yeah, I said mince.
Great. So I peel the top layer of the skin off.
So if anyone's logging on now, or just, after the quick intro, we are making black bean burger patties. And we read the recipe, and we are prepping all the things that we need for it right now. So we are prepping the onions. It's set to mince it. So we're going to go ahead and mince it. We already minced the garlic, and then we're going to move on to the herbs and spices, and then the beans, I believe. And these are all steps that we read in the recipe. We have it in our heads, and then we went ahead and that's when we start doing our food meal prep, right? After we read through the recipe and we know what's coming.
So with mincing, I kind of do like a small chop, and then I go back over it. So I don't like to use the claw as much when I go to a mince, because it's just like so small. So I use kind of my like non-dominant hand to go on the other side. And the technique worked. I'm not crying thanks to this onion being in the fridge, which is great.
Feel free to share, anyone in the chat, if you have a great tip for how to not cry while chopping onions. Shayna tried this one right now where he put the onion in the refrigerator, and I guess to chill the whole thing so the water molecules do not fly
戴上
around.
眼镜。
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are some of your tips for how to not cry while chopping onions? I would love to know.
I know some people wear kind of goggles.
If you have goggles, for sure.
Swimming goggles or anything.
对，
That's a pretty hilarious sight, honestly. To see
It definitely is.
goggles ready.
Ready with them. Okay, and then rinse the cilantro and mince. So I actually didn't have any cilantro, but I do have a parsley plant. And I really, really like parsley. So it says to do 1/4 of a bunch. It's not like an exact measurement, so it's kind of just how much you like. But I already rinsed this. It was in my garden, so it had a lot of dirt on it. Sometimes people will actually, you can do it if you have a sharp knife, like bundle the little edges together and almost like shave off the leaves. You just want to
What
make
a
sure
great technique.
fingers out of the way. You'll still get some stems in there, which I don't like mind the stems. I actually like think they're very
欧芹。
tasty, but I'll keep mine in, but you're welcome to peel all of them out. The other way people do it is they actually like
哎，对，但是那个
every little
没有我们那个中国那个香菜好吃。我有时候我好几次去买香菜买错了，就
and if you get fresh parsley, you could use like other herbs like cilantro, which is in the recipe. But you can also use dried. You're just gonna want to like use more if it's dried because the flavor gets a little bit lost as it dries. What were you gonna say, Gina?
I was gonna ask what, I think I missed it. Are we mincing the parsley?
Yes,
Okay. There are a lot of mincing going on.
a lot of mincing going on. And while I do that, Gina, would you be able to tell me what the next step is?
I actually don't have the recipe pulled up.
No worries, I've got it somewhere. Let me see. Okay, mash the black beans. So I'm gonna open the black beans. And while I do that, Gina, if you just want to talk about the sodium again, that would be great.
Yeah, so if you are just logging in right now, we went over a few of our tips on eating beans from canned. We have tips on how to make beans from dried beans, which is one of the most affordable ways to get beans. But if you are getting canned beans, we want to look out for sodium. So first thing is that you can try to buy no salt added. And if you cannot find no salt added, honestly, either way, we do recommend that you rinse out all the water that it comes in that can, and that washes away a lot of the excess sodium that you want to avoid for the most part. Sodium is a very important nutrient for us. However, we are actually largely not deficient in it. And so we often look for ways to cut back a little on the sodium, and this is one of them.
All right. And so one thing with the herbs, so I mentioned that I grew some parsley. You can grow herbs pretty easily at home. You don't need a lot of space for it. And so you can kind of see my my herb plant has seen better days, but it's actually still going okay, I swear.
I'll share mine.
But this is just some basil. And so I really like to have fresh basil. I keep it in like the window near the sun, just so it has enough sunlight. And I think it really is great. I know that when I buy basil or any other herbs at the store, I can't always use them as quickly as they go bad. So if you have your own little plant, you can just kind of trim it. And Gina, what do you got there?
So I keep by my windowsill in my kitchen green onions. So let's see if I can find one where I've cut. The trick about regrowing green onions is that, okay, here's a really good example. See if I can show it in the camera. Okay, so you can see these are kind of dead and pulled back. Those were the old green onions that I chopped off to go eat, but I cut it right above where everything splits. That way that plant can still grow. So this one came out from the middle, and I let that kind of regrow. It only took like 2 or 3 days to kind of come back. But I have a couple to rotate among. So, you know, I can allow some to grow and eat others. And I actually really like the white part of green onions. So I have a bunch of green onions. So when I do feel like eating the white part too, I take a couple and just eat that back and know that I won't get rid of my my stash. But yeah, I just keep it in a cup, a little bit of water. The roots are intact, and it'll just regrow.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can grow other plants too. I know that you can regrow, you said green onion. I've done it with leeks before. And I know people will do it with like romaine lettuce or, you know, other things like that. A pretty good way to, you know, save money, but also do a little bit of a science experiment.
It's really fun because you keep it by your kitchen and just something you can just go and grab.
Cool. So I'm actually going to mash this up. You can kind of see it. Maybe I'll show it in this one actually. There's beans, garlic, onions, and parsley. And instead of using a food processor, I'm actually just going to mash it with this fork. And while I do that, Gina, if you're able to talk about what it means to be a complete protein.
Yeah. So we are demystifying meatless meals with this demo. And this is one of them. Shayna's, I think you've talked about this black bean burger a few times. Yeah, so we sent in the email to everybody, multiple recipes of different ways to get protein that is not in a meat form. There is something that we want to keep in mind, though, as we are eating non-meat proteins. In order to eat all the protein that you need, it's called having complete protein or eating a complete protein. You want to eat a variety of protein. That's something that we are always stressing. Are the onions getting to you now?
Yeah. I think now that I'm mixing them.
Yeah. So So we always stress this in all our classes and all our demos to eat a variety, eat kind of the rainbow, various colors to kind of make sure we hit all the nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. And that is something we want to stress here as well with proteins. So, however, complete protein is a whole different topic. Today we're making black bean burgers, and that is not a complete protein. And oftentimes, plant-based proteins are not complete. And what that means is that our bodies need 20 different kinds of proteins. Our bodies also, on their own, create 11 of those proteins, so we don't have to worry about those. However, there are 9 other kinds of proteins that we need to eat in our food. And again, in order to get all those proteins, and if you don't eat meat, you should eat a variety of those of protein sources to kind of hit all those points. And let's see here. So we're making a black bean burger, and in order to make this a complete protein, you compare it with a whole wheat burger bun. And other ideas are examples of a complete protein that is meatless is peanut butter on a whole wheat bread, hummus, and pita. And the best example of all that I love is beans and rice. Those 3 examples are great meatless ways to get complete proteins. Yeah.
Okay, I'm adding an egg. I'm going to add 1 cup of breadcrumbs. And then I'm going to add some pepper and some cumin.
Great. What I love about this recipe as well is that it is a great example of a recipe as a framework. If you don't like black beans, if you prefer garbanzo beans or chickpeas, you can use that instead. If you prefer lentils, you can use that as well. If you prefer certain kinds of spices, you want to ramp up the spices, play down the spices, you can do that as well. If you don't like parsley, right, you can use cilantro or vice versa. Yeah, so it's a great recipe for you to kind of play around with what you prefer.
Yeah, what would you add if you were making them, Gina?
Things I really do like black beans. I kind of would make it the way that you're making it. And I do enjoy cilantro, but maybe I would add some green onions.
Green onion would be really good. I can see bell pepper being good in it too.
I love shallots. So maybe instead of the red onion, I might do shallots instead.
Yeah, if people aren't familiar, shallots are another type of, they're in the onion family. Actually, I think I have one I could show.
Yeah. They're roots.
Different taste, which is cool. They look kind of like this.
Little teardrop.
Little teardrop, just like mine from cutting these onions. Okay, so you might notice before we said that we were rinsing the beans to get off some sodium. This recipe doesn't actually have any added salt in like table salt form, but it does have some soy sauce. And so I actually have low sodium soy sauce because I eat a lot of sodium. It's good to have low sodium. But we're gonna add 1.5 tablespoons of soy sauce. And even 1 tablespoon already has 23% of our daily value of sodium. And so maybe I'll actually just add 1. That might be. But soy sauce has like a slightly different flavor than just table salt. So it's going to give like a kind of different depth to the flavor. We're also going to add a tablespoon of sriracha, which is like a type of hot sauce. And I was wondering if it would make it feel like really spicy, but it did not. I think if you wanted to have it be really spicy, you would want to add more than a tablespoon.
Yeah. I would say sriracha has a good level of sweetness beyond the spice, but so if you mix it all in, it might kind of bring all that out and mix it in with everything else.
And then we're going to add my favorite spice, which Gina knows what it is.
Do I know it? Do I?
Oh, I thought, maybe not.
Maybe not. Favorite spice.
cumin is my number one favorite. We often do like an icebreaker in meetings.
I love cumin.
Huh?
I love cumin as well.
I know, we can both love it.
Okay.
We can share our love for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're adding 1 teaspoon. And if you're a cumin fan like myself, you can add more. And then it says to add 1/4 teaspoon pepper. I actually am probably not going to measure it. I'm just going to use my grinder. But I'll just kind of, eyeball it. It's really okay to eyeball your spices. The only thing that is kind of good to measure, just because it's so easy to get too much of it, is sodium. So we'll talk about it a little bit more in the week 4 class, but sodium is something your body really, really needs, but doesn't usually have a hard time getting because the diets are pretty packed with it because it's so tasty.
And a great way to, reduce salt in your food, but still not lose flavor is to play around with different spices that you might enjoy and figure out what's a great kind of replacement in terms of adding that flavor back into your food while reducing salt. Because I know salty things taste really good. I'm there with you. But it is something that we don't need to worry about getting too much of, or too little of, sorry.
Exactly.
We do worry a little bit about getting too much of it.
Yeah, and if we do have too much, it can just cause some health problems like high blood pressure, some other cardiovascular things.
So Shayna minced her onions and garlic and herbs, mashed the beans with her fork. If you don't have
a spoon, my fork wasn't working very well.
If you have more time, you can use a fork. If you have a food processor, that works too, or just anything that kind of mashes it down to something that's mushy.
And I'm just gonna kind of like pick a burger-sized amount that I think would be good and make a little ball, and then flatten it. And you can kind of see, looks like this. The
looks delicious.
The beans will be more or less chunky depending on how you mash them. When I made the test one with the chickpeas, I actually used the food processor, and it made it like one consistent texture, which I think could be, good or bad depending on what you, or not good or bad, but people might have a preference towards one or the other. And I'm going to start forming these, but while I do that, Gina is going to talk about how to make different meals out of things you have from your pantry.
Yeah, so this is a great recipe for a leeway into the topics we'll be talking about this coming Tuesday, which is about planning and stocking a pantry, stocking pantry, planning, and recipe as a framework. So we already talked about how this recipe is a great way to kind of change a lot of things out to fit your preference. This is also a great recipe for using up very common ingredients that can be found in your pantry. So this would be referred to as a pantry meal. So, let me repeat, the few ingredients that are in here are things that people typically have already, just canned beans. Or if you don't, it's very easy to get in bulk and just stash it away. So yeah, canned beans, and you can use dry herbs, spices, an egg. Most people have eggs lying around. I think, garlic is kind of a very common root that people have. So so all these things can be made. If you don't have time to go to the store to buy anything fresh or new, you can go ahead and just dig up the can of beans and get a couple spices and herbs together and make this. And as you can see, we made this in a pretty short amount of time. I think it took about maybe 20 minutes or so.
Yeah. And I think I'm trying to explain the steps, but if you're doing it just straight, I think it would probably take 15, 20 minutes. And I think we'll talk more about pantry meals next week too. But the cool thing is everyone's pantry meals will be different because everyone's pantry is different. So my pantry always has beans because I am a bean enthusiast. But Gina, your pantry usually you love broth, I know.
I have canned beans as well. It's a really good backup to whenever, I just don't want to make anything yet want to have some protein or something healthy on hand.
Yeah, and even between like me and Gina, or even like other staff at Solid Ground, everyone's pantry will look totally different. I think shaping these burgers too is something that's really fun to do with kids. I think shaping burgers, meat or vegetable based, is really fun. Kind of get your hands dirty. But yeah, and we talked about how you don't need to, go vegetarian or vegan to be healthy or anything like that, but having different types of proteins will give you different nutrients. So beans, for example, have a lot of fiber, which is really good for keeping us feel full longer, having like regular and normal bowel movements, and actually slowing the way that sugar enters our bloodstream. So fiber is really good for that. But also these cans of beans were like 80 cents each. So that's a really cheap protein, compared to other kinds. And I actually haven't tried it yet, but I would love to. You can actually mix like ground meat and beans if you're interested. And yeah, so I'm going to start cooking these on the pan. Let me just double check the ingredients. Not the ingredients, the instructions. To cook the burgers, heat 1 tablespoon of oil in a skillet. Add a few of the burgers, cook for 4 to 5 minutes on each side until they are browned and heated through, and repeat with all the patties. And so while I do that, Gina, if you're able to talk about oils and their smoke points, I have, what am I going to use today? I'm going to use probably like sunflower oil. Is that what it's called? Safflower?
I think it might be safflower.
I know that it's one of the cheapest ones that they have. Sunflower. I'm going to use some sunflower oil. But yeah, I'm going to move the camera around too, so I'm going to turn my video off in a minute. But if you're able to talk about that, that would be great.
Yeah. So, Shanna, are you going to make all the patties today? I think you said you're turning off your audio. Okay.
What did you say?
Are you making all the patties, or are you going to freeze some?
Great question. Before I start cooking them, I'm going to make 4 and freeze 4. And when I made them last time, I cooked like 4 of them, and then I froze 4 of them. And I'll show you actually one that I froze so you can see it.
Oh, great. Yeah, so kind of going along with the last topic about pantry meals, this is also great to make bulk and to freeze, because it is easy to kind of put back on the skillet and to heat up again.
You can just kind of see it has like a different consistency because it was in a food processor. This was with chickpeas, that I covered it in plastic wrap and put it in a freezer bag. And then you can reheat it. You can just defrost it and then cook it like you would the other ones.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to move my side.
All right, thanks. Thanks for that. Yeah, so as Shanna mentioned, we want to pay attention to the kinds of oils that we use when we cook, because it does make a difference. It's not about flavor entirely, but about when it's been overcooked. Certain oils have different heat tolerances, and some oils are kind of meant for flavoring and meant for a lower heat cooking. But so in Cooking Matters and a lot of the recipes that we recommend when we are using when a skillet is involved, we recommend oils that have a higher smoke point. So what does that mean? What does a higher smoke point mean? It means it doesn't become smoke or steam or gaseous until it's a higher temperature. Some oils will start smoking at a lower temperature, others will start smoking at a higher temperature. And once it starts smoking, it means it's too hot and it's burning, and it's no longer good for us to consume those, actually. So that's something we want to avoid. So we always recommend oils that have a really high smoke point, or when we're grilling on a skillet. So I think, Shanna, you're using sunflower oil. So the other oil that we were potentially thinking Shanna was going to use is safflower oil, which is another really high smoke point oil.
I always use the two.
Yeah, it's very common. An easy one that everyone has access to in most common like grocery stores like Safeway, QFC, or whatever is canola oil. This one is a vegetable oil and usually pretty cheap, but that's a great high smoke point oil, go-to oil. Another one that I have is avocado oil.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And sometimes different oils are like different costs too. Like you can find them cheaper some places. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, like exactly. Canola oil is a very common. Peanut oil is also very common too, and that one's pretty high smoke point as well. I've seen in a lot of stores. I do have this olive oil, and I don't use this for. There's peanut oil. Olive oil is a medium heat smoke point, and I tend to use this for more so like the secondary oil that I would use to kind of flavor something or add at the end, not necessarily like pan and food contact. I'm gonna see if I can share a graphic with everyone right now of a great graphic of all the oils and where they fly.
And feel free to share in the comments either on Zoom or on the YouTube, like what are some of your favorite oils?
Let's see here. All right, what is?
我们都是喜欢用那个牛油果油。然后那个橄榄油，刚才我听你说，他说喜欢那个可以高温，其实是橄榄油不应该是高温啦，这是用饭菜生吃。对，对，所以这个问题。
And if anyone has any questions, Lynn, that you want to interpret, you're welcome to ask them out loud.
Okay.
Yeah, 我听到。
You can find such graphics for smoke point oils in the various oils.
听到了吗？他在说话。
With a good simple Google search.
Okay.
But you know, if we're just going off of this video and right now, canola oil, super easy. Peanut oil, super easy. Safflower, sunflower, avocado oil.
And while we were waiting, just put the rest in the plastic wrap that I'm not going to cook. And I'm going to put them in the freezer for later. But I'm going to cook up these for my household.
Okay. So I think that's how you make black bean burger patties.
How do I know, Gina, if this pan is hot enough to put things in?
Oh, great question. So there's a few ways. And feel free to share in the chat if you have your way of finding out if the oil is hot enough. One of the ways that we recommend is throwing a lid, if you don't know, throw a little piece of food that you are going to cook already, piece of onion, piece of black bean, throw it in there. We got a piece of onion there.
Nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening, means it's not hot enough yet. And when it's hot enough, it's usually when there's a bunch of bubbles and it starts sizzling. So we're gonna leave that piece of onion in that skillet and we'll wait until it starts kind of bubbling and we can then throw in the patty. And like we were saying earlier, if it starts smoking, steaming, it means it's too hot. Reduce the heat, bring it down to something a bit more manageable, and then you go ahead and throw those patties on.
Exactly. I was going to say one other thing. Oh, I have a question for anyone in the chat or for you, Gina. What kind of things would you want to eat this with?
Ooh, I see now. I love making patties and breaking it up into little pieces and throwing it into like rice.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
Yeah. I think I also don't mind the classic burger.
I really, really like topping burgers with like sauces. So I have like, like a tomato, like a ketchup, or like tzatziki, which is like a Greek yogurt cucumber sauce, or I don't know. I like to like add a lot of things to the top. Like greens or caramelized onions.
Ooh.
I also really like to make sweet potato fries. So I feel like that's a really good accompaniment, which we won't talk about now or demo now, but basically you just cut the sweet potato into a fry shape and season it with whatever you want and bake them. I like cumin, as you know, or maybe you don't know.
Now I know.
Oh, now you know.
It's a gift to you on your birthday. We remember.
But I like cumin or like and garlic and lots of cayenne, and that's kind of another thing you can customize. So these are hot. The onion I put in before is bubbling. And I'm just cooking these in a skillet that I have. Any pan is probably good. If you do it in the oven, which you can do, it's not going to have the same texture. So the person that made the recipe that we adapted it from said that it worked best on the stovetop, but you're welcome to try any way that you'd like.
Great. So each side 4 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And instead of, I mean, we don't have to wait for that now, but I will share a photo in our next class. I'll remember to take one. I don't have any buns. I usually like to make buns. I'm happy to share that recipe too, but I'll probably just eat it on some toast and lots of sauce. So
thanks, Shayna.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I think this is it. I don't think we have any questions. So if anyone does have questions later, feel free to message us over email.
And if you do choose to make this, feel free to share it on social media with the hashtag CookingMattersAtHome, which is just the name of the class series. We would love to see it, or you can email it to me and Gina at cooking@solid-ground.org.
Yeah, I would love to see it.
And I know you can't smell it from here, but it smells really good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was our Friday demo. Hope to see everyone on Tuesday.
Yes. And we will be talking about pantry meals and some food safety.
So yeah, safe storage and meal planning.
And meal planning, yes. It's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, and also happy birthday, Shayna.
Thank you.
All right,
Glad
bye y'all.
This time with you virtually. Awesome.
All right.
All right.
See y'all later.
Thanks.
好的，谢谢你翻译，下次还是你的。